So I am happy to introduce the publisher of 417 magazine, Gary Whitaker, who will also introduce our expert, Dee Wampler.
Welcome.
Thank you for having me here. It's the first time you've had a felony criminal defense attorney as one of your participants.
Dee is a Springfield, Missouri native with a law degree from the University of Missouri and has more than 53 years of experience in the courtroom. It started as an assistant Greene County prosecutor from 1967 to 70, then elected as I think the youngest prosecuting attorney in Greene County, or maybe in Missouri, in 71, and has engaged in private practice since 1973. He specializes in felony criminal trial work, defending people he knows are guilty. So. He's authored 8 books, one of them, The Trial of Christ, A Criminal Lawyer Defends Jesus, and Defending Yourself Against Cops in Missouri and Other Strange Places. Dee's work as a criminal trial attorney has earned him a national and international reputation. His cases have been featured on investigative television programs including Saturday Night with Connie Chung, Inside Edition, The O'Reilly Factor, Primetime, and Court TV. On November 6th of last year, Missouri voters approved overwhelmingly Amendment 2 to permit state-licensed physicians to recommend marijuana for medical purposes to patients with serious diseases and medical conditions. And Dee has volunteered to serve on a committee being formed by the governor to help craft the rules and regulations for the implementation of that law. And that work's supposed to be done by June 4th, so there's a lot of work to be done. Did you volunteer to serve on that task force because you have clear ideas on how the law should be implemented, or because you want to be at the table so you know how best to defend the criminals that seek you out?
No, I already know how to defend criminals. I've spent my life in court, so I'm very familiar with all the criminal laws. This is an earth-shaking time that we're living in. This is a new law that will affect directly or indirectly everybody that's sitting here in this auditorium. It is very important. We've had laws against marijuana and other controlled substances for a century and a half, and now all of a sudden we're saying, wait, think, it's a do-over. Maybe it's not so bad after all. And there's a lot of devil in the details that's going to have to be worked out by the Missouri Board of Health and Human Services, Senior Services. And they're going to have to pass rules and regulations on how we're going to regulate cannabis. And I would like to be at the table and participate because, well, I prosecuted the first marijuana case in Greene County in 1967. I remember it very well. And now, for all these other years, I've been defending people on marijuana cases. So I've been on both sides. I've been on the prosecution side and the defense side. So I feel like I can bring something to the table and maybe participate in some way because, like I say, we're going to have a lot of laws, and everybody sitting in here has got to figure out how you're going to obey the laws and whether you're going to obey the laws or not. And because you want to know what you're doing. You don't want to do anything wrong. You don't want to get a criminal record.
So in less than an hour, you'll have a chance to tell the governor one-on-one what the new laws, the rules and regulations should look like. What would you tell him?
I think today I'll just say what I've said is that I think a lot of the older people in the community are against it. I think the younger people are in favor of it. I think 65% of the voters went with it. So now, between now and the next 6 months, we've got a lot of work to do. There's about 30 other states that are in this situation that have medicinal marijuana. And we've got to start studying their procedures, and most importantly, what went wrong, if anything, in those states. And Governor, if there's anything I can do to help clarify things as opposed to muddying the water in any way, I'd be glad to participate.
Have you looked at the other 30 states to see where the medical marijuana laws might have been violated or misunderstood or poorly applied, to see where you may be defending people.
Yeah, well, California was one of the first ones many years ago. Colorado, 6.5 years ago. We're talking about, I'm talking about mainly recreational marijuana, but also the 30 some odd states that have medical marijuana. Any kind of law that you have, people are going to violate it. I mean, you tell a teenager don't do that, and the first thing they're going to do is go do that. And so there have been all kinds of problems. I mean, a myriad of problems in those states. And the figures and facts go both ways. Depends on, some of the sheriffs are saying it's terrible, it doesn't work. The marijuana's out there, kids and grandkids are smoking dope. And on the other side, you have other people that say, yeah, but we need it. There's a lot of prescription drugs that we take that have effects. Besides it's fun, besides it may be a gateway drug, but so's alcohol. And we got both sides against each other, and there have been a lot of problems in these states. I can quote you some figures. Driving while under the influence of drugs is a new thing. Get used to it. DUID. Forget about DWI. They say in Colorado, they've increased DUID prosecutions for driving under the influence of drugs 140% in the last 2 years. So, if we have recreational marijuana and everybody says, well, that's a good idea. Well, the first time somebody high on marijuana hits and kills a family of 4 out here on 65 bypass, I'll come around and ask you, do you still think it's really a good idea? Because it is going to be misused. It's just human nature.
We have we approved a very narrow medical marijuana law that only affects 9 or 10 medical conditions. But this is a room full of entrepreneurs and business owners and influencers in the community. Many of them own companies that hire people. So in a specific case, you own a company that your employee handbook has a zero tolerance drug policy. You tell a potential employee or a current employee, we're going to do quarterly drug testing. And that employee has a doctor who prescribes medical marijuana for a specific condition, and they test positive. How does an employer prepare for a law that allows the use of marijuana and an employee handbook and a company policy that doesn't?
Well, you're going to have to decide in your business, do you have zero tolerance or not? If it's an UPS driver or a Lyft driver or a pizza driver or any one of these occupations, they have zero tolerance. You're not going to be smoking dope, and you're not going to get it medically and have any of those jobs. If you're a forklift operator, forget it. You're not going to be smoking dope medically and driving a forklift where you're going to kill somebody. So there's so many occupations that it's zero tolerance, and it's going to be zero tolerance. Now, ADA, Americans with Disability Act, you have to make allowances for people that medically need marijuana. You have to make allowances, if at all possible. So your business is going to have to decide, are we zero tolerance, or are we going to cut slack and allow some people that smoke marijuana, which may have an effect, they may be a little numb, they may sleep late, they may have absentees and things like that. You're going to have to decide how strongly are you going to enforce these laws. But if you don't mind me saying, so that everyone knows here in a couple of months, if you get a certificate to be a marijuana user because of one of 10 medical problems, glaucoma, diabetes, disc disease, Tourette's syndrome, on and on and on, you can buy at 192 places designed in the state of Missouri called dispensaries. You can go to 192 places and buy marijuana if you have a certificate. Now, it's not a prescription, okay? So get that out of your, it's a doctor's certificate. And in addition to buying marijuana, you can have 6 plants at home. You can grow 6 plants, and each plant might produce eventually a pound or 2 of marijuana. 6 plants. If you're a caregiver to a couple of people, you can have 18 plants in your home. Now, how are we going to regulate that? This is supposed to be in a locked room somewhere? Are you kidding me? How are the police going to investigate that? And if you have it sitting on the kitchen table and you got kids and grandkids in there, or the neighbors come over, or your kids go over to the neighbor's house and they've got marijuana plants, you can begin to see what a problem it is for law enforcement officers. So yeah, with regards to the businesses, you kind of have to reconnoiter right now, and basically you got to kind of wait until June until the governor and Representative Whitaker is in charge of the committee that's studying this, what their rules and regulations are going to be. You got to be Johnny on the spot to figure out how are you going to handle it in your particular business. You don't want to get sued. Yeah, you know, lawyers are, it's litigious society that we're living in, and if you fire somebody or refuse to hire somebody for a particular reason, well, you possibly can be liable.
There's already been controversy about the implementation of the law and the fact that if you apply to run a dispensary or you apply for the medical marijuana certificate and get a prescription, you have to forfeit your conceal and carry. How does a state's medical marijuana law upend a Second Amendment to the Constitution?
Well, surprise, surprise. Now everybody that owns a gun or has a CCW, you don't have to have a concealed weapon permit anymore. You can be 18 or 19 and anybody can own a gun and walk around anywhere hanging around the neck on a string loaded. You don't have to have any training, you don't have to load it or unload it, and you've never fired it, but you can walk around with it. That's the society that we're living in. Now, here we go, we got state and federal law, and incidentally, Gary, it is against the law in state and federal court to possess marijuana. Do not forget that, okay?
But I have medical marijuana that's legal.
Well, I know, but the state and the federal government is very unforgiving. And the U.S. attorneys have got more things to do here probably than prosecute you. There's 12 U.S. attorneys and about 100 other federal agents. And then the county prosecutor, Patterson, has 46 prosecutors ready to prosecute people. But you cannot have a gun and have marijuana. I don't care if it's a prescription or not. The ATF has issued rules and regulations, and until those are changed, everybody that thought they could own and possess a gun at home, if you're going to be using marijuana, it is against the law, okay? That's the law. It's just the same as being a convicted felon. I have people constantly come in my office and say, I live in the country, I need a gun. We have varmints out there and bad guys. And I go, you're a convicted felon, you can't have a gun. And so same thing with marijuana. If you've got it medically, you're using it, there goes your Second Amendment rights. That's just, I'll call that an unintended consequence, Gary, a collateral consequence. Nobody thought about this. You didn't hear that being debated at the time when we were voting for this. And now, here it is, and people are beginning to think, well, that's against my constitutional rights. Well, the law is the law, and until it's changed, I mean, the laws are changing, they're ever evolving, but until they settle right now, you can't have a gun and any type of marijuana.
I know you come from a house divided. You said your wife voted for it, you voted against it.
That's true.
Why?
But we've been married 53 years and we worked it out.
As we're going through some of these things and seeing some of the things that could trip us up legally, why do you think it was approved at a 65% rate?
I don't know. It's 65% are right here. I imagine we took a show of hands, probably 85 to 90% here probably voted for it, because I think a lot of younger people were more in tune to it than senior citizens like me. But I don't argue against it. I mean, you can kind of get an idea of where I'm going. I mean, and I've always been close to law enforcement, notwithstanding the fact that I'm a defense lawyer and I cross-examine officers. But I have great respect for the law, great respect for police officers and their job, and great respect for the judges. And so it's going to be a problem enforcing this. And I don't know if that answers your question or not, but you can see the morass that we're getting into here with. We're making young people today, we're taking away their childhood, if you don't mind me preaching a little bit, before their time. We've already done that with television and the internet and a lot of things. Once upon a time, there was a key where you could turn your controls off on the internet so your kids couldn't see certain programs. You know, forget it. I mean, everything's there now. And now we're mixing in the opioid problem. We have 10 people a day in Missouri dying from that. We have thousands dying from all types of other diseases. And now we're putting in the mix, which includes alcohol use. Now we're throwing in the cocktail situation of marijuana. I don't know that that's a good thing. I don't really feel proud sometimes in what the society that I've passed along to my children.
Now, what Missouri passed was a medical marijuana law confined to 6 diseases.
Now about 10.
I'm sorry, 10 diseases.
Or any other debilitating disease that 2 doctors will certify to. So all you have to do is go in and say, my hip hurts. And the doctor says, well, that's not on the list. And I say, well, it's a chronic debilitating disease. And he says, okay, you say so. We'll get the doctor next door to sign off on it. Mr. Wampler, you've got your certificate. Happy smoking.
So
that's how easy it could be. And the pressure will be on the doctors.
So I'm going to set you up so you can rant appropriately. You believe that by cracking the door open with the medical marijuana, the door is going to be kicked open, whether legally or just socially, is going to be seen as more acceptable to use marijuana beyond the medical limitations. So go ahead.
I don't think so. I know so. I know that that's where we're going. Everybody in here knows that's where we're going. We're going eventually to a legalized marijuana situation.
So if society takes the vote for medical marijuana as a signal that it's decriminalized there, so perhaps I shouldn't worry about it as being enforced, how will law enforcement take the signal that 65% of the population think in the medical marijuana situation it's okay?
Yeah, and most importantly in my job, how will the jury take it? Now, we don't really have jury nullification. I can't argue it. I can't go to a jury and say, yeah, I know my man had a pound of pot, but you know, it's going to be legal someday, and you know, I'll bet some of you voted for it. So you can't argue that. But less than 10 grams of marijuana is an infraction, okay? Between 10 and 35 grams of marijuana is a misdemeanor. More than 35 grams is a felony. You could go to prison. You have a felony on your record. It'll be on your record forever. You'll be on probation at least for 5 more years, and 7 years after that you can get it expunged. But you know, this is the seriousness of the situation. I don't know if I'm answering your questions, but...
Well, you jumped to the jury, which means somebody has been charged and is now... My question was, will law enforcement be as vigilant about enforcing marijuana laws, recreational use, now that a medical marijuana law has been approved by 65% of the population?
Yeah, I think they'll have to be. I think they'll have to ease off. I mean, law enforcement's got enough to do right now. They're crack and heroin and coke are being sold out here on the streets. We do have some gangs and gang wannabes here. We have a lot of gang people that come in here. Don't think we don't, but we got some big-time gangbangers that come in here on the interstate and so forth, and this is going on. The police have got plenty to do. And, you know, they'll be inclined, instead of arresting you, putting you in jail for 24 hours on a 24-hour hold on a felony, they'll be more inclined to give you a summons or give you a lecture and let you go. And the idea is that everybody's doing it, which I think breeds disrespect for the law, unfortunately. Well, but that's where we are today with the marijuana situation.
Just to help raise your blood pressure.
Okay.
I know where you stand. I mean, where you stand personally, and then how vigorously you would defend somebody in court, I know are 2 different things. But philosophically, isn't it better to begin to legalize and regulate and tax and control, similar to what we did after Prohibition, than to continue to create and encourage a black market where gangbangers come in under the radar? if we eventually legalize it medically and beyond, isn't that more controllable than having it stay underground?
Well, that's one argument. It's a bad situation now. The question is, are we making it worse, or are we making it better, or is it still going to be bad? And, I can't really answer that question. We're spending a lot of time right now prosecuting these cases. So you're saying make it legal. If we make it legal, we'll save a lot of money by not prosecuting those cases. And supposedly 4% tax is being taxed that's going to go to the veterans, which is a good thing. The police sometimes don't know which laws that we want them to enforce. So what they do is they write a report, make an arrest, give it to the chief gives it to the prosecuting attorney. And, if you're arrested on a felony, you have an NCIC rap sheet, National Crime Information Center rap sheet, forever. Mr. Hoover devised a great plan where if you're arrested anywhere on a felony, you have an arrest record forever. It's on there. You really can't get it expunged, even if you're not charged or convicted. And so you folks have got to be aware of that and tell your brothers and sisters and your children that it's very easy to get arrested today on a felony, and once you do, it's very difficult to get out of trouble sometimes.
You realize if this audience is as young as you think they are, they have no idea who Mr. Hoover is.
Well, yeah, I met Mr. Hoover, and so he was a fine man when I knew him, and I met him about 9 months before he passed away. But I know the killer question is coming up. I know you're going to ask me.
Should I go ahead and do it?
Well, it's up to you.
Okay.
But everybody in here is saying, you know what, I don't know if I like that guy or not. I like some of what he says, and some, I think he's an old fogey. But go ahead and ask the question.
All right. So, you were already in court this week defending a murderer.
He was alleged to have committed a murder.
Yeah, right. So, you've made a career out of defending people you know are guilty. How do you sleep at night?
Well, first of all, just because the government charges you with a crime, how many of you in here believe the government's really on your side? Okay, I don't see any hands. The government overcharges a lot. And believe it or not, sometimes they do charge people, and people are innocent. Don't forget that. And especially, they may be innocent of the charge that's been put against them. Now, my job is to take a person, this is the way I view it. I try to help Springfield and Greene County one person at a time. Maybe they can put on my grave, he made a difference in people's lives. I don't represent anybody on a drug charge or an assault charge unless I get them in therapy and so forth. I require them to get into alcohol and drug treatment. I require it, or I'm not going to represent a person like that, or an anger management program, or I have them psychoanalyzed by a psychologist. And I do a lot of things like that to make that person a better person. So a year from now, when I take them to court, they look a lot better than they did when they went in. But my job is to bring forth anything good that I can about that person to the judge. And anything that is bad that might be suppressible, that shouldn't be brought in, I make sure that that is questioned and cross-examined. So I present my client as best I can. And how do I sleep at night? Just great. If I have a client that gets a sentence, I didn't do it. I didn't cause him to beat his girlfriend and knock her teeth out. I didn't cause him to get 10 pounds of marijuana and sell it or commit some other crime. He did it. And generally people know that they did it. And they're sorry. A lot of the people that commit crimes, believe it or not, are really good people. They're really, and they just did something stupid, just kind of a momentary thing. And so I just do the best I can, and that's always what I've done, is the very best I can. And I like what the coach said. The coach said, get the clutter out of your mind and stay focused. I like that. I don't think you should take anything in your body that's bad for your body. I think your body belongs to God, and God wants you to be the very highest and best person that you can be. He wants you to stay focused. And if you take an illegal substance of any kind and you're hurting your body, you're destroying your focus, you're destroying your attention, and if you will, you may be committing a sin as well. And I'm against that. And if I can take a person and make them see, if you will, that there's a better way in life than what they had, then I'm happy with the situation that I'm in, and I sleep pretty good at night. So many people are from difficult family situations. They're broken families. Their families have been on drugs. Their families have fought for years and years. There's so many people that are pushed down, and they've never been told, you're a good person, you can achieve greatness, you can accomplish this, you can accomplish that. So many people come in and they graduate from drug court, and they go up and they're so proud when the judge gives them a certificate and says, you graduated from drug court, and everybody claps. And those people walk away, and that's the first time anybody's ever said anything good about them or they've ever achieved. And that's a wonderful thing, the different diversionary programs that we have now, rather than putting everybody in jail or prison. You don't want to put everybody in custody, but we want to try to help them see a better life.
I'm going to try to get some free legal advice out of you here at the end. A room full of entrepreneurs. There are licenses being applied for now for growing, cultivating, transporting, dispensing medical marijuana. What would your advice be to a potential medical marijuana entrepreneur?
Yeah, well, I'm a felony criminal defense attorney, so I would tell you that's a civil matter, and I will refer you to like Chip Shepard at Carnan Evans, who's a good friend of mine. He was Lawyer of the Year, and he specializes in this and is advertising for his law firm now that they're specializing in this type of work. So it's the first time in our history that we've had a law firm do this. But he's been a leader in the cannabis movement. It's Cannabis sativa L is the botanical name for it. But I would recommend going to somebody like that, and they can help you get licensed and so forth, because it's going to be a big business. The hemp cannabis business is going to be a multi-million-dollar, billion-dollar business in America, as the federal government, I think, at some point's got to fall in line. And they're going to have to probably legalize it under federal law.
So when your wife's doctor prescribes medical marijuana for her condition...
She's got to keep it in a locked container some way and keep it away from me, because I don't want to possess it.
Are you going to be
You're not charged with owning it. You would be charged with possessing it if it's in an open area that you have access to.
So you're not going to be inviting the neighbors over?
This will probably be my last appearance on 417 Summit. I love you, Gary.
No.
And Joan.
You know, we both did some research before we did this, and one of the things I discovered as we were looking at both the medical marijuana's laws in Missouri and the medical marijuana laws in 30 other states, it was an odd discovery that I found the word most commonly used by marijuana users. Do you know what the word is?
Pot?
No. It's the word ear. Ear.
Oh.
Dee Wampler.